welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. If it matters to you, it matters to us. We are continuing our special Diwali series, and tonight we are bringing you an expert view on the state of the economy, decoding all the cues that we're seeing on the macro economy, and also looking forward to 2022. Who better to do that than the former Deputy Governor of the RBI, Anand Sinha. Mr. Sinha, thank you very much for giving us the time here on Leaders of Tomorrow, speaking with our entrepreneurs and small businesses directly on the state of the economy and also giving us your outlook for 2022. Thank you so much for your time here, sir. And perhaps we could kick off today's interview by asking you if you had a Diwali wish for our entrepreneurs, for our small businesses, what would it be?
Well, it would be a very happy Diwali, and perhaps a much better Diwali next year, in the sense that we hope that the economy, which is surely on mending ways, does pick up steam and really flowers out to its potential.
Absolutely, and all eyes and all hopes are definitely on that. On that note of optimism, I can talk about another cue that we've really seen as far as the macro economy is concerned. In fact, several positive cues coming in on the macro economy here in the country. You, of course, are aware of those, but for the benefit of our viewers, I just want to read out 2 or 3 key headlines that we've heard very recently, and that is as far as the GST collection is concerned. October GST collection that was announced recently at 1.3 lakh crores, the second highest ever. Exports are up 42%. Manufacturing PMI, again, that we've heard recently at an 8-month high. What is all of this indicating to you, Mr. Sinha, and how are you reading this?
Well, all this indicates that the steps which have been taken in order to nurse the economy through bad times have been paying off. And all these figures, if you look at, there is a sharp rise in GDP. But one also has to have a sense of reality that despite that, we are still about 9.2% below the pre-pandemic levels. And from what I have read, we would be able to catch up with the pre-pandemic levels only in Q3 of this financial year. So which means that if we really want to go back to the earlier trend line, which itself was not very good, in the sense there was a drop in GDP in the recent past, as we know, even that will take much larger growth to be able to catch up with a subdued trend line, as I would put it. Sure. And if we really want to catch up with the trend line that we all hope and wish for, it will take a lot of doing.
Sure, absolutely. You were talking about next Diwali. I want to look at a slightly shorter timeline, if I may. Look ahead into, perhaps budget 2022, look forward to 2022, and really talk about some of the key factors that we are looking at, which could perhaps impact the economy. And I want to start, of course, with the big vaccination target that has been announced by the central government, and also the cues that are trickling in as far as the festive period demand is concerned. I know a lot of it is pent up, but as more and more states are opening up, as more and more relaxations are coming in, as more and more manufacturing is being allowed. So in the next 2 or 3 months, what are you expecting perhaps things will look like, going forward into 2020?
See, life is already, I would say, near normal now. We were in the depth of despair when the second wave hit us. But I would say that given the extent of despair at that stage, difficulties, in fact, getting a hospital bed was a horrendous task, in fact. So we have come a long way, and thanks to the vaccination drive, and of course, the precautions taken by people, though in pockets, people were not really taking precaution, but that would always happen. So I think the crux of the matter is the vaccination drive. The figures tell us that 70% of India has had at least, 70% of the eligible people have at least had one vaccination. So I'm pretty sure that by the end of this year, we should be even the second vaccination should achieve a much bigger target. Now, we also hear of mutants, we also hear of Delta variants. So, if it doesn't strike us in a big way, and of course, there are worries abroad, which can spook the external situation, which has been a big boost for our export performance.
Sure.
There are quite a bit of ifs and buts, but I would say that we can certainly hope for a much better next year.
On the flip side, let me talk, of course, about the consumer confidence survey and some of the key indicators on which respondents have been polled. The responses of those, perhaps a bit of a cause for worry, but I'd love to hear from you your thoughts on how you're reading that. Economic situation, employment, price level, income, on all of these factors when respondents were polled, the sentiment is negative. How do we reading that, sir?
See, the sentiment is negative. That is in the immediate time period.
Okay.
That is why they say that for the next 1 year. And the reason is this, that there has been a lot of devastation in the lower strata of the society. For example, if you look at Sensex, it's zooming. Why? Because the big corporates are really doing well for various reasons. And there are, of course, other factors, optimism, the fact that vaccination has gone ahead in a better way, the fact that there have been quite a few policy initiatives. So the sentiment on one end of the spectrum is very positive. But the devastation which has taken place, that has not yet been fully captured. To my understanding, there is still not enough data to understand how much the lower strata, the MSMEs, the small businesses, the SMEs have suffered. So that is why for them, the optimism is not filtering in right now. But looking at the general environment, I think they feel that situation will become better over a period of 1 year. That is the next year, the next financial year should be better. That is what the consumer confidence survey conveys.
Also, on the flip side, I want to talk about what's really going on manufacturing. I don't want to talk sector specific, but I want to bring up what's happening in the automobile space. A lot of supply constraint, particularly as far as chips are concerned. On the overall manufacturing space, sir, do you have any concerns? Do you feel that, as more and more companies come back to working and meeting very pent-up demand, that there's going to be a huge supply side challenge, perhaps? Would you have any views on that?
Well, it depends on how much demand picks up. Because as I said, there is a good proportion of the society which is not optimistic, which means their employment, their income levels are pretty dim as far as they are concerned in the immediate future. Now, the demand that they will put in would be in different sectors. Automobile demand may come from more affluent sectors.
Yes.
Now, as far as the more affluent sectors are concerned, they have either not suffered that much or they have been able to recoup. In which case, yes, supply constraints could come in because the supply chain movement has to normalize. And there are issues on that. For example, the contact intensive activities have not really picked up as much as they should have. But as the pandemic subsides, those things will happen. The other aspect is that the input costs are rising. Important input items like chips, semiconductors, they are getting into short supply. So they will have an effect on prices. It could, depending on to what extent this happens, it could even create a shortage substantial shortage vis-a-vis demand.
I want to talk about the broader markets. We've been seeing quite a bit of a rally here in the domestic markets. We've been seeing a massive flow of IPOs, sir. How are you reading all the market action? Is it indicating clear optimism to you, or would you want to, read all these figures with a note of caution, perhaps?
See, market exuberance in most of the occasions are irrational. So there is certainly a bit of irrationality in the sense that it is not completely in alignment with the fundamentals of the economy. As we discussed earlier, the economy is improving, but still it is not out of woods completely. So to that extent, there is certainly exuberance, irrational exuberance. But at the same time, there are solid reasons also. There are a few reasons. Number one, easy money, because of which there is a lot of inflows from abroad. Then you have the big companies have done well, and that is what your index indicates actually. So that is another factor. The third thing is a lot of optimism is hinging on two more aspects. One is the success, relative success of vaccination drive, the ebbing of infections, pandemic infection, which brings about a lot of optimism for the future.
Sure.
But the third and very, very important factor, according to me, is the policy initiatives which have been taken. Because as far as reforms are concerned, there was a sense that reforms have actually stalled. But in the last 1 year or so, a lot of steps have been taken for reforms, which gives hope for the future.
Sure.
And therefore, these are valid factors for optimism. At the same time, this is not in alignment with the fundamentals of the economy as yet.
So I have to take a quick commercial break on that note. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight on the Leaders of Tomorrow crux is Anand Sinha. I want to talk, since you were talking about what's really happening as far as the markets are concerned here in India. I just want to take a quick minute and talk about what's happening globally as well. We saw the non-farm payroll data out of the US. Huge disappointment of that, perhaps likely to have an effect as far as any stimulus that the US is planning to continue or not continue. How do you read that data? Any cues from global markets that you think are going to start reflecting here? We'll see a trickle-down effect here in India.
Global markets have been doing well, but at the same time, there are apprehensions about what will happen going ahead, in the sense that the financial markets could become more tight because of the fact that inflation worries have started coming up. So it may lead to financial tightening. So that is something which will have an effect not only abroad, but it may have a reflection on our markets also. Then again, the pandemic situation seems to be not very good abroad. That again has or will have a negative effect. Supply chains, there are problems with supply chains abroad also. Semiconductor shortage, chip shortage, all these are things which are global in nature. So therefore, how the markets globally will perform will depend upon how these factors play out. But certainly there are causes of worry.
Back home, I want to talk about what's happening as far as the NPA situation for MSMEs are concerned, sir, since we speak daily with MSMEs. The latest figures are available, of course, show that MSME NPAs have increased to 12.6%. This was as of March 2021 quarter. Those are the latest figures that we have, which are available. Would you be concerned on those? How do you think perhaps those will pan out going forward into the rest of this fiscal?
No, I would certainly be concerned, because a figure of 12.5 or 12.6, despite all the regulatory accommodation that was provided, there was a special restructuring scheme for MSMEs. Despite that, if we are at 12.6, it is certainly a cause for worry. At the same time, one can expect higher level of NPAs in the MSME sector, because it's a vulnerable sector for various reasons. But I would certainly agree that there is a cause for worry, and it has got to be reined in.
Would you have any outlook as perhaps how we would see that figure changing, increasing, decreasing going forward? Any outlook?
I think as I said earlier, the full data of the impact of pandemic is not yet available as far as the smaller sector is concerned. So it is possible that the NPAs may still go up before they are reined in and they start declining.
I would love to get your thoughts on the future of technology and how small businesses can use more technology, particularly in a country like India, where you have nearly 60%, data shows nearly 60% of India's MSMEs don't even have, say, a website, for instance. Nearly 25% of India's adult population, it doesn't have any access to credit, formal credit. In this situation, your views and your outlook really on the use of technology, one, and two, particularly for small businesses? What is your advice for them?
I have thoughts on that, which I'll discuss with you right now, but it has nothing to do with me joining
Sure.
the Navi board.
Sure.
Because technology otherwise also, as a banker, as an ex-central banker, has been a preoccupation and a concern. Technology is the future, because the figure that you mentioned, that the small businesses, particularly MSMEs, do not have access to credit, formal credit.
Yeah.
In fact, according to my understanding, the figure is much larger than 60% that you put,
Okay.
which do not have access to formal finance.
Sure.
Now, why they don't have access to formal finance is well known. In the short interview, I would not go into those, but basically it pertains to the fact that they don't have the kind of financial statements, they don't have the kind of collateral, which is what bankers rely upon.
Sure.
Now, technology of the fintech kind has shown a great amount of promise. In fact, there are studies which have shown that, and this is very much discussed in international forums.
Yeah.
There are algorithms, there are technologies which have proved to have a much better credit assessment than the traditional methods. And these technologies rely on data from various points, not necessarily financial data only. In fact, in the case of MSMEs, financial data may not be there. In fact, I have read that one or two fintechs in India, I mean, what I have read may be limited, but that shows where the things are going. One or two have claimed that they have 1,000 points of data in their credit assessment.
Sure.
Now, that is incredible. That shows that the access to data from various sources can really result into much better credit assessment.
Sure.
So that is where the future lies. The traditional method of credit assessment does not work. Not only in India, nowhere does it work very well. Because there are the feedback, the inputs for traditional methods they simply do not exist in the MSME space. And therefore, the new technology is something which has to grow. Because without that, we will not be able to tackle all these issues. Now, when we are talking about that, then let me just add a bit about, there is a lot of talk about CBDC. Now, CBDC is what we want to create, an open platform and that open platform to be conducted by the central bank, that is Reserve Bank in the case of India. Of course, they are in the process of conceptualizing, so what ultimately will happen is difficult to say, but this is the broad concept. And there you allow private parties to come to provide various financial products. So it's a technology platform operated by central bank, which should be able to lower the cost of operations, and therefore which should be able to provide access to the smaller people at a lower cost.
Since you're talking fintech, sir, since you mentioned fintech, in fact, I want to read out another piece of data again. I'm sure you're aware of this. This is for the benefit of our viewers. UPI transactions have crossed $100 billion. That's in October. How are you reading that? Clearly, there is a lot of innovation that is happening. You were talking about how it has to also now be accessible not just on smartphones, but on feature phones as well. This is clearly going to then increase, in your opinion?
Certainly. I mean, UPI is an innovation which has acquired a lot of fame across the world. UPI by itself does not ensure financial inclusion. It is a very positive development, very helpful to citizens, but something more needs to be done, the kind of things that we talked about, in order to really make it more accessible and of use to the people at the lower strata of society who may not have a feature phone, who may not have, who would want, because of internet connectivity issues, to be able to operate offline, at least in smaller amounts.
All right, Mr. Sinha, thank you so much for your time. Wish you and your family a very happy Diwali, sir.
Thank you. Same to you and your family.
Thank you, sir. Completely out of time on this episode. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Our contact details coming up on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.